Lawyers of Reddit, is there a time where you said, fuck it, you are on your own to a client? Not a lawyer, but my family had a long running feud with neighbors over boundary. They were complete shits about it, and we knew they didn't have a case. Court time happens, and apparently they have continued being shits to their own lawyer. Usually if a lawyer doesn't want to represent, he'll say something ambiguous like, I will no longer be representing these clients. But not this guy. He was as tired as we were of putting up with them after only a few months. He makes a 30-minute statement to the court detailing all the ways his clients have been shit. Like not paying his fees, repeatedly not showing up for meetings, and also shouting at his receptionist. Instead of withdrawing with modesty, our neighbor decided to represent himself. What followed, I'm told, was about an hour of courtroom beatdown. Our lawyer and the judge pick apart everything they say, expose their continuous lies, and show them up for the horrible people they are. Not a lawyer, but had a dispute with my landlord a while ago that was in the let the lawyers talk to each other, but we are ready to go to court for this phase. At some point his lawyer sent us some documents, including an inspection report for the water boiler, which caused the problem, that was done just before we moved in, which seemed to state that the boiler was in perfect condition. Unfortunately, for him, we also had a copy of this document in our files, and there it stated that the valve, which was the specific cause for the problem, needed replacing. Having a closer look at the document they sent us, it became apparent that this part was very poorly photoshopped out of the document. Our lawyer sent an angry reply to his lawyer. Then I never heard of the other lawyer again. But strangely the landlord was suddenly very open for the settlement that we offered him. So I don't know what happened on their side, but my hunch is that his lawyer dumped him for setting him up with forged evidence. Not a lawyer, but managed a law firm. Court-appointed client appeared for a shoplifting case, wearing the coat that she stole. Needless to say, her case was not dismissed. I'm an investigator, and the very best criminal defense attorney takes public defender appointments. The clients who are lucky enough to get him, knowing that he was appointed by the public defender, often have no idea that their cases were hand-selected by him to work on, and they will often call him public pretender or disparage him for being a bad attorney. That is, they don't like his sage advice and fire him. I've even seen clients get money from their families to hire a real attorney and give private money to another attorney that also takes public defender appointments but has way less experience and doesn't do as good of a job. I always laugh at these idiots when they insist that they can do better. Not a lawyer, but I know some lawyers. 1. My dad's divorce with his first wife was a shit show and a half. After the divorce was finalized, she and her boyfriend accused my dad of breaking and entering and assaulting them. The boyfriend was adamant that dad ran onto him, punched him and ran off several blocks to his car. Their lawyer looked like he was ready to run away, pride begone. Because my dad broke his right leg and had to have surgery, he was wheelchair bound for at least 6 months. It was clear they made the entire shit up. 2. From a lawyer friend. Client wants to have his name put on his son's birth certificate and have custody. Problem is the son is 20 years old and doesn't want the guy in his life. Lawyer asks why he wants this, even though the son is an adult. Client talks of being a new man, but it comes out his own parents disowned him, and all HSI inheritance is going to his son. He thought he could go back to their good graces if he becomes a father. So one time I was appointed to represent a guy who was having a trial for adjudication in a dependency case. He wasn't at fault for the removal of his children and was fucking pissed off that he had to be party to the case. It's the law. So he's yelled at me for several weeks about this, and I've simply said I can't do shit about it, man, it's the law. So he threatens to fire me, and I say go for it. He rescinds. Repeat. This happens a few times. So we get to court, and the judge comes in and says any issues to go over before we start. My guy stands up and says I want to fire my lawyer because he's not gonna help me. The judge looks at me and asks if that's true, and I said no. Mr. X is angry that he's a party to this case because millisecond X is the offender. He doesn't believe me when I say that it's simply the law. Judge asks him, and he agrees, and says he doesn't think he can trust me to represent his interests. So the judge lets me go. I close my folio and hand him the file. Ask to be withdrawn. Granted. I turn and head for the door. As I'm walking out, the judge says, "Okay, Mr. X, who's your first witness?" X gets mad and yells about needing an attorney, to which the judge replies, "You're allowed appointed counsel and you fired him. We are still going forward. Who's the first witness?" I couldn't see it, but I know that I was smiling in 5D. Worked in a law firm as a paralegal. There was this client who was caught on a dashcam sticking his leg out for the car to run over. I was asked to collect child support arrears, pro bono, for a secretary at our firm. The child was already 18. The dad was in arrears, but legitimately disputed the about half the amount, as a lot of it was for expenses that were questionable. Also, the AGs had not kept tabs on anything. The guy was unemployed and this was during the Great Recession. Finally, he agreed to the full amount, but asked to pay over 5 years, if after the principal was paid we waived the interest. He even agreed that, if he was even one payment late, we could demand the full amount with interest. Client refused. So I asked her what was her goal in this whole thing. She said, "I want to prove to the world what was lousy father and a bum he is." Fortunately, this was before I had filed anything, or made any type of appearance in a court. So I told her that, if she wanted to do that, she could hire and pay for an attorney, but it wasn't going to be this attorney. Yes, when they told me, I got a different attorney. Nothing to do about that, but provide a copy of their file and terminate the representation, maybe a notice to the court depending on circumstances. Upon one occasion I remember thinking, oh thank God I get to be done with this fucker. To turn the question around, our brokerage once had to fire our client, who was a lawyer, because he wanted our help in defrauding an insurer. Really was swell of him to put his plan in writing on an email I could ping over to the account manager who looked after his policy though. Yes. A client, after I specifically told him not to, farted on my leg in the middle of court. He got 10 years and got out an 8 for good behavior. I had a custody case one time where I was representing the mother pro bono. The lawyer on the other side was representing father pro bono as well. And let me tell you about these two. Mother was in her early 20s and her income was from a part-time job at Walmart and government benefits. She never finished school and lived at her dad's house, who himself was not working and living off the government dime. She was missing half her teeth and her overall hygiene was horrendous. After meeting her, it blew my mind that someone would feel comfortable enough to have unprotected sex with her. Until I met father. He was also in his early 20s and didn't finish school. He had a marked speech impediment. Mom told me he has some kind of mental health diagnosis with the word explosive in it and described how violent he could be. He was certainly no looker. For income he too was on government assistance, but his Facebook was replete get rich quick schemes which clearly never panned out. He was alleged to be selling marijuana as well to supplement his income. Well, dad has other kids with other women in other parts of the state. And he is way behind on child support payments. So he gets scheduled for a contempt hearing for failure to pay. He asks his pro bono custody lawyer about the contempt hearing, and the lawyer reminds him that he's only his custody lawyer and that he doesn't represent him in any other matters. So the day of the hearing comes, and dad goes to court without a lawyer. It doesn't go well for him, so he decides to blast his custody lawyer on Facebook for screwing him over in his support case. He also decided to call his lawyer afterward to bitch him out, but the lawyer wasn't in the office, so he spoke to the lawyer's secretary. We were scheduled for a custody trial the next day. It had been on the books for months. I get a call from dad's lawyer stating he's filing an emergency motion to withdraw and postpone the trial and was seeking my concurrence on the motion. Apparently dad threatened to kill his lawyer's secretary during his rant to her. We have an emergency hearing that afternoon with the judge, and dad's attorney tells the judge what happened. I tell the judge I have absolutely no objection to his lawyer withdrawing. Motion granted. Trial rescheduled for 3 months later. I don't know what was said to dad by his lawyer, but I hope it was fuck you, you are on your own. PS 3 months later he didn't show up for his rescheduled custody trial because he was again behind on child support, this time in another county, and they threw him in jail. I told the judge that's why dad wasn't there, and the judge wanted to reschedule the trial. I reminded the judge about what happened 3 months prior and the judge changed his mind. He dismissed the custody case, which kept the kid with mom, which is what she wanted, but in his dismissal order, said dad had 30 days after he was released from jail to request a custody trial. Dad never did. I generally only handle serious injury and wrongful death cases. I have told dozens of clients to pack their bags once I determine they lied to me about what happened. Most of these liars admitted it to me in a way which indicated they thought the entire process was a game of be the best liar. They're gonna lie, so I'm gonna lie. You never ever, no matter the weather, ever want a serious injury client with a credibility problem. We regularly put 6 figures in expenses and time into these cases, and I'm not about to do that if we have a liar for a client. Keep in mind, I'm talking about lying about important facts, and not the "this is what I remember" when it turns out inconsistent with the physical evidence. I'm not talking about "I didn't mention this yesterday because I was embarrassed." I'm not even talking about "I didn't tell you I have been double filling my oxygen script. This was a decade ago, can't do that anymore because I knew it was wrong." Just lies about what happened. I see a few people saying you can only withdraw for cause, but in my jurisdiction you're not required to represent someone if you don't want to. You can fire a client for any reason, so long as you give them notice in writing, and you're not within a month or so of trial. Timeline will depend on how complex the case is, as that would be unfairly prejudicial. Officially we call it a breakdown in the solicitor-client relationship, but that usually translates to my clients are aging a shat, and I'm done with this shit. It's not uncommon in my area of practice. Not mine, but I wrote the Wikipedia article. Marvin Gabrian punched his attorney in the face in front of the jury. During the trial, that lawyer asked the judge for permission to quit and was denied. Personally, I feel like the evidence against him was pretty cut and dry. Basically everyone he comes in contact with disappears mysteriously. And I don't have evidence of this, but I can't imagine that lawyer really giving it his all after that. He later appealed the guilty verdict on the basis that him punching his attorney in the face in front of the jury could have prejudiced the jury against him. Not a lawyer, but a friend of mine is. He is an estate attorney and apparently some woman kept wanting to deed shit that wasn't hers. He told her that he could not take her on as a client after 10 minutes and didn't charge her because she kept trying to deed shit like her still living husband's car to one of her grandkids, not on the condition that she outlive her husband and it become hers, specifically when she died, because she didn't trust her husband to keep the car maintained. She demanded a plaque be placed in her honor at a local park. While the park did have a "donate a brick" campaign, that was a decade ago, and you cannot compel the city to do that. She wanted to donate her boat that she owned jointly with her husband to a charity that disbanded years ago. She wanted to deed her house to the aforementioned charity on the chance that she outlives her husband. Again, that charity disbanded. He said she seemed a little off. Not a lawyer, been a legal assistant / paralegal for 18 years. One that stands out, she wasn't a client for a week when she screamed her head off at the poor receptionist. Lucky me got to tell her it wasn't the receptionist's fault she didn't have an appointment. I booked her one for the next morning. Next morning I handed her paperwork and retainer and told her we wouldn't act for her. I got to do it because as good as the lawyer was in court, he hated confrontation. Thanks for watching and share your stories. Don't forget to consider the idea to maybe think about potentially subscribing. Peace.